We're gonna get started.
It's kind of empty in here. I like it.
I know it's going to get more full.
No.
Oh, pretty good. Thank you. I'm Alyssa Buxbaum. I'm the National Director of College and University Programs for ADL. I work out of the national office, and we are so lucky to have 25 regional offices across the country who have their own really special relationships with the local Hillels on campuses. And we're lucky today to have Hillel International here. And ADL and Hillel International have a wonderful partnership. We do research about student attitudes, we create content together, and we help to get more people reporting incidents. And so without further ado, I'm gonna hand over the mic to Adam Lehman, and we'll get the program started.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm Adam Lehman, President and CEO of Hillel International. Really delighted to be here today, moderating this discussion with three outstanding student leaders who are going to share about their experiences confronting anti-Semitism and demonizing anti-Zionism on campus, how they've dealt with it, what we can all learn from their experiences, and how we can all move forward together to take on what is an unacceptable set of conditions on campus for too many Jewish students. So that's where we're heading. Before we get going in earnest, I want to thank ADL for making this a topic at this year's conference and for their partnership. We really do have a lot of work we're doing with ADL to take these issues on campus. As we get started, just quick show of hands. Raise your hand if you're a student on campus today. And we have co-chairs of the Hillel International Student Cabinet up front here. Student leadership is the name of the game in terms of dealing with this, so really appreciative of that. Raise your hand if you are a parent of a current student in college or university. Yeah, great. Quite a few of those. Raise your hand if you have high school age students. Right. So really preparing for the future. And raise your hand if you've ever walked into a Hillel anywhere in the world. Love it. Look at this. This is what it's about. No, but it's about creating that community. So without further ado, we're going to begin to hear from the students. Before we get to talking about the issues you've confronted and your leadership, one of our principles at Hillel is that we're there for the whole student, and you all have lives that go beyond, thankfully, dealing with things like anti-Semitism. So let's just hear from you about who you are, where you're in school, what year you are, what you're studying, and any other activities that you're involved in. And we're going to start with Kaylee, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. My name is Kaylee Werner. I am a sophomore at Indiana University. Yeah, go Hoosiers. And I am studying, it's a mouthful, so just buckle down. Entrepreneurship and corporate innovation, political and civic engagement, leaders and leadership, and environmental sustainability. So really, I just don't know how, but I want to work in business. And before I say really quickly what else I'm involved in on campus, I just want to say that I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and yeah, go Steelers. And I grew up running around the hallways of the Tree of Life Synagogue. So anti-Semitism and the effects it's had on my community are very personal. So it's kind of affected everything that I do today. So whether that's my social sorority where I am on the Greek Jewish Council and I'm able to share my Judaism with all of Greek life, or my business fraternity where I'm able to learn the business skills that I can use to affect the anti-Semitism that's happening, or even the cycling team that I'm on, just to handle the PTSD that comes with all of that. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Amazing. And even though I'm a Browns fan, I actually still have love in my heart for Pittsburgh. I'm married into a Pittsburgh family, and kidding aside, that tragedy marked us all, and it's been really remarkable and inspiring to see the resurgence of not only the Jewish community, but the entire Pittsburgh community in responding, which is one of the keys that we'll talk about when it comes to addressing these issues. So thank you so much. Owen, please.
Yeah, for sure. So hi, my name's Owen Krauss. I'm a third year and I go to UC Davis in California. I'm originally from the Central Valley in California, like a really tiny town. Like if you point to the middle of the map, that's where I'm from. And I study international relations, and I plan on going to law school, which basically means I don't know what I'm doing, but we're gonna figure it out. It's fine. So besides my involvement with pro-Israel advocacy, I'm also a part of the Pre-Law Society. I was told that would look really good on my resume, so I'm a part of the Pre-Law Society. I'm in student government, yeah. And I think for me, as someone who's not Jewish but was roped in to the pro-Israel community, to being an ally for the Jewish community when I was a freshman, has really meant a lot to me, and I think it's really important to speak on how the non-Jewish community can continue to be allies and educate themselves for being able to stand up for the Jewish community.
Amen. I mean, and really kudos to you for not only the work you've done that we'll talk about, but showing up and being such a strong proponent for and partner in addressing these issues. Really appreciate it. And to round it out, Max, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Max. I'm a fifth-year student at the University of Toronto. I study physics and astrophysics. That means I watched too many space documentaries as a kid. I want to be Bill Nye. I'm actually from Florida. I am from North Florida, which is part of the Bible Belt, which is the best place to live. That's why I moved to Canada, where the drinking age is lower than America. My parents are here in the audience. They both grew up in Boston. My mom's not Jewish, but my dad is, and we're not a very religious family. That's a bit about me. I didn't go to campus to become a Jewish activist.
And again, we'll start talking about how you guys have been engaged. It's so powerful for each of you to have found your own way, not only to the issues, which sadly so many students confront, but to how you take those issues on. And so we'll head the other way. And Max, maybe you can talk about how you've encountered anti-Zionism, other forms of anti-Semitism on campus, and how it impacted you and how you personally responded.
Sure. So one of the first things I remember when I went to the University of Toronto is I made new friends, and you go around like, oh, what's your ethnic background and stuff? It's like, oh, this is fun. I told them that I am Jewish and not religious, and they were like, that's not possible. I was like, okay. And then later in first year was the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, and we had a candlelight vigil. A U of T staff member died. And our student union, one, they didn't show up for the vigil, and two, it was an outside vigil, and then there was a second part inside where we booked a room, and the student union gave away our room booking. And then further, there was a student union, not my student union, but another student union that boycotted Hillel. Then there was a couple BDS motions and student union stuff.
Yeah, I mean, please tell us kind of how you experienced that and also how you responded. And I'll just point out what I think everyone heard, which is we're not dealing with, unfortunately, isolated issues where it's one issue on one campus. As you just heard from Max, it can be a half dozen issues in a year, which really starts to impact students. So tell us, please.
So I attend the monthly student union meetings because they have free pizza. I don't look at the agenda or anything, but one time they had a BDS resolution on it, and at the time I was co-president of one of the Jewish clubs, so someone gave me speaking rights to have comments because I was concerned. And I asked, what are they doing to ensure that Hillel wouldn't be boycotted on our campus like it is on other campuses? And I was met with the response that we aren't against free speech, we're only against hate speech, and that we're not against Judaism, we're only against racist Zionists. I don't describe myself as a practitioner of Judaism, so that struck me as very odd. And then their use of Zionism was very strange to me. They seemed they can't fathom that someone's a Zionist and can criticize Israel. So that was the main one. At the actual meeting where this motion passed, I submitted a reaffirmation of Jewish student rights motion, which was, half of it was struck out prior to the student union meeting, which is horrible. And then in addition, we tried to put a couple amendments in for the BDS motion. It was we will not boycott Jewish student organizations on campus. And those amendments were voted down by the membership.
And yet, again, I think you're underscoring what's so critical, which is we can't as a community or a society, control what others may choose to do, but we can stand up and express our identities, our beliefs. We have here representatives of Hillel's Israel and Anti-Semitism Action Program that works with students and student leaders like Max so that this point of view at least gets expressed, even if it isn't always recognized. So thank you for sharing on that front. Owen, please share more about what you've seen and again, how you experienced it.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was a first year, I ran for student government at the very end of the year. And I was elected. And the week before I took office, there was an emergency BDS motion that went through and was forced through. There a lot of drama and whatnot. And the meeting got moved for the final passage of the motion. And this happened after I was sworn in. But because this happened in the previous Senate, I couldn't vote on it. So I watched, you know, as it passed and could just see how distraught everyone was about it. And, you know, I realized we had to do something. At that time, the pro-Israel group on campus, Aggies for Israel, had a large amount of students in the middle of COVID, which was amazing. But as everyone was graduating, everyone was tired, everyone was done fighting it. So we started to work towards measures of peace. And that caused me to be able to work with some of the senators on the other side of it just to agree to make sure BDS enforcement no longer comes up. So, you know, that tentative little alliance held for a while. And then this year's rolled around. And what we've seen in Northern California is a giant uptick in anti-Semitism, and now has resulted at UC Davis as well, anti-Zionism on campus. So an example is last week, Aggies for Israel, the pro-Israel organization I'm president of, held an event where a former IDF soldier came to speak about his experiences in the 2014 Gaza war, you know, PTSD as a veteran, toxic masculinity, etc. And before we could even have this event on campus, we had threats to protest that had gotten to the point where we were scared for everyone's safety. And I remember as, you know, when I'm speaking to a group of about 50 students saying, hey, we're still planning on having this on campus, we're not going to back down. I just remember seeing everyone absolutely white as a sheet. Everyone was absolutely terrified. And so we ended up moving the event to the basement of Hillel and proceeded to have the event partially in person, but mainly over Zoom. And while we still had a decent amount of turnout, we're seeing an uptick and a continued rise in anti-Zionism, coupled with far-right anti-Semitism within the recent months. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that combination is really problematic, and you know, many of you are probably familiar with this, where you have that far-right neo-Nazi or other forms of nationalist-based anti-Semitism joining together with demonizing forms of anti-Zionism. So it's hard to hear, but it sounds like you guys at least did the best you could to push through, and we'll talk more about what else we can all do to address these issues moving forward. Haley, please share more about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. When I came to campus last year, I was very excited. I showed up to the first Shabbat dinner at Hillel, was finding all the Jewish friends that I could make, and was so excited to immerse myself into that culture. And what I wasn't expecting was to start hearing stories of people seeing mezuzahs being torn off of doors, stories of people having to erase swastikas off of whiteboards when they come into class in the morning. The worst story I heard was from another cyclist who was telling me that she faced anti-Semitism so bad that she had to transfer out of IU by the end of the year. Her dorm floor, for lack of a better word, they ganged up on her. Every time she'd walk down the hallway, they would all stop what they were doing and Nazi salute her. They would tape pennies to her door. Hillel came into her floor and did an intervention with them, and they took all the paper pamphlets that they were given from that, and they ripped them up and taped them in the shape of a swastika. And it got to the point where she didn't feel safe. And she moved out of the dorm, and they put her in a different dorm. And the consequence for the boys from the administration was that they were going to be moved out of the dorm too. They were moved into the same dorm she was moved into. So they were back. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle people telling me these stories of extreme anti-Semitism that was happening 2 floors below me, and I had no idea. So I contacted Hillel. Me and a staff member created this task force, the Anti-Semitism Prevention Task Force on campus, and we realized that we had to start somewhere. So we started with the mezuzahs, the first thing that had happened. And dozens of mezuzahs were ripped down, which when we talked to students about it, they said it felt like their safety was being torn away. It felt like their community was being ripped from them. I mean, everything that a mezuzah stands for of just having one little thing on your door so that other people can connect with you, or so that you feel safe and comfortable when you're walking into your bedroom, that's important for a lot of students on campus. And so we decided that we'd start this project and we try and put up 10 mezuzahs in the place of everyone put down. Well, then it was 20 mezuzahs, and then it was 30 mezuzahs, and now it's how many mezuzahs can we spread? We put 30 mezuzahs on the Memorial Union, and we've given out mezuzahs to every single sorority house. We're working all over campus to try and figure out where people need help and what we can do, but things just seem to keep happening. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with the website Greek Rank. It is a anonymous website for Greek life students on any college campus to post how they feel about what's going on. And there were comments about all of the Jewish fraternities on campus, really terrible information about how the boys of AE Pi are trying to take over the world, and how the boys of ZBT are, I mean, it was actually just terrible what they were saying. And so the administration has been awesome, and we've been working with them, and they took down those posts, and they've been at the forefront. They'll tell us anytime something happens, and we're able to work with them. But now, like, looking back on everything that I was able to work on my freshman year, it's hard to see that it's happening on every college campus, that it's not unique to me, and it's not unique to Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, that's clearly one of the trends we've seen. I want to lift up a couple points there that you made. The first point that we all have to appreciate is that sadly in this moment, there is a real cost in many cases to expressing yourself Jewishly, or God forbid, expressing yourself as a Zionist, right? And so that could be social cost, that could be academic impact, it could be physical safety, and you're hearing that sense of fear. I also want to lift up, though, your point that you all had an enormous impact through the Mezuzah Project. It was a visible way to fight back, and it made a difference. And then additionally, you mentioned the fact the administration did step in. One thing we all have to recognize, and we all can be a part of advancing, is work with administrations to make sure, not that they treat Jewish students better than other students, that they don't exclude Jewish students from the same protections and respect that they should afford to every student. And we have seen tremendous success, again, in partnership with ADL, working with administrators and securing that kind of strong response, which has been really meaningful. And again, each of you in some way has a connection back to a university, and your ability to promote that kind of partnership from administrations is invaluable. I'm going to start this time with Owen, but we've been hearing about how to stand up to hate on campus and hate specifically directed at Jewish student communities. What advice would you have for other students who may be here, or the families of incoming students, in terms of how to prepare to address these concerns and issues?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways, as much as we've talked about everything that we've seen, there's still a lot of ways to fight it. So, for example, for anyone who's politically inclined, run for student government. After the threats to my event last week, and after we moved it, one thing became clear: we need to have more candidates run for student government. And our elections closed today on campus, and we have 2 candidates who I'm hoping will be elected, and that's 2 more candidates, 2 more student senators that we have in the government who are pro-Israel, who are pro-Jewish students. And additionally, for parents, push administration, students can only do so much. We can only get into so many rooms. If you continue to contact administration, if you work with other parents to contact, to push administration, if you can find people who donate to your university already, who want to support your cause, you need to work with them to push administration, because administrations a lot of the time only respond when there's press, politics, or money involved. So if you can harness one of those 3 things, you'll be able to really change the climate on campus. And additionally, for more students, doing your best to get involved and be as confident as you can be and as comfortable as you can be. Like I said, run for student government, be involved in pro-Israel organizations, because the more outreach you have, the more you'll be able to spread your message and change the climate on campus. We're doing this currently with Aggies for Israel, and it's working. We're seeing a change on campus. Yes, we've drawn a lot more hate. Yes, we've drawn a lot more protests, but there's a reason why we've drawn more protests, and that's because it's working. Our organization has grown over 25% in the past month and a half on social media alone. Our board has dramatically expanded. Our outreach to other organizations and to work with administration has dramatically expanded. It works, and it will continue to work.
That's an amazing answer. And by the way, this is why we know at Hillel that these issues are going to be addressed, because we have student leaders like Owen who are working on these issues with us and for the right outcomes here. Haley, please, what's your input and advice?
Yeah, well, everything he just said is spot on, and so much of the advice that I would give. But speaking directly to students, high schoolers, the first thing is I'm so excited to hear today that the ADL is partnering with BBYO. I think that starting in high school, being able to learn the talking points, being able to learn how to have the right kind of conversations with the right people is the first step. Coming to college and being thrown into those conversations can be a lot, so being prepared in whatever way that might be is going to be a big step in the right direction. But the next piece is that some conversations not everybody's prepared for. And sometimes it's very hard for me to get into one of those conversations and have to tell somebody I don't know the answer. I will always get their number and follow up with them in 24 hours. I will do my research and I will give them the answer. But it's so important to have these hard conversations, to not work around what we do know, to tell people when we're stuck. So I think that's the advice that I would have.
Yeah, that's terrific. And on the first point, in terms of incoming students, the BBYO ADL partnership is a wonderful development. Both ADL and Hillel partner with Route 1, which is providing opportunities for teens to go to Israel and also to prepare themselves for any issues they may encounter on campus. So these are all resources that everyone can be taking advantage of. Max, please.
To add on to the great advice that we've already heard, practice this explaining what Jewish culture is to someone who's never met Jews. You might get asked some really bizarre questions. In first year, I was a volunteer at a Holocaust education exhibit, and one of my friends, like a friend, came up to me and was like, okay, I've heard of the Holocaust before, but also no idea what it is. What is it? I don't know how to describe that easily to someone who's never heard of it besides the word before. And that was like a common belief at my campus. So you have to get ready to explain yourself, but also get ready to explain a bit about like Israeli culture. The left-wing student unions tend to think of themselves as the anti-racists, that they can't be wrong, and they're not against us. They see themselves as our ally. They're only against right-wing Israelis. What they don't realize is they're not just against right-wing Israelis. They're also against all Jewish people. When I was fighting with the student union, I challenged them to go to, all right, take some anti-Semitism training. You can pick any progressive Jewish organization you want. They picked one. A week before the anti-Semitism training, they sent us an email saying, oh, we can actually work with them because it's in violation of BDS. And then that's when the administration stepped in, because they didn't just do a coded language anti-Semitic attack. We had them to rights, and it was good.
Yeah, and I just lifting up education, education, education. Most students, even most administrators on campus, honestly, just don't get it. And they don't get it because they haven't been exposed to it. They haven't walked in the shoes of a Jewish person or a progressive Zionist. And it's not everyone. We know there are many people who are coming at these issues, frankly, in a much more hostile way, even if they've been exposed and informed about anti-Semitism. But our capacity as a community to educate is a critical tactic and a big opportunity to address these issues. So thanks for highlighting that. I want to talk a little bit about how the broader community can be supportive of students today. And I want to highlight one particular facet that you guys have gotten to, which is it's not just about the BDS battle. It's not just about the swastika in the bathroom or the discrimination in a given classroom. It's about the chilling effect on Jewish students and Zionists to be able to simply express their identities, which again, we are in a moment in society where in a good way, we are encouraging people to be able to be themselves and express themselves, and yet 20% of Jewish students have, on surveys, indicated they are afraid to do so because of the social cost or consequence. More than 50% of young people who identify as Zionists say that they pay a price, a concrete and specific price for it. So in the face of that, what can we all do, whether it's organizations or other members of the community, to support and enable young people to be themselves and express who they are Jewishly and as Zionists? And Haley, please go ahead and start.
I've got to preface this with Hillel's not paying me to say any of this, but having them as an outlet, having a place to go. I know for personally every year at the Tree of Life, like as the date approaches and time gets a little bit harder for me, like having a place to be and like feel comfortable and feel at home has been everything. And just having the staff members there that are so supportive and having that group of other students around and having like a home on campus, a building that we can all call home. And just like having faculty that are so supportive of my Jewish roots and my Jewish heritage, ones that ask me questions after class because they see that I'm wearing a Hoosiers for Israel sweatshirt. Just having people who truly care is so, it gives me such a sense of hope, which I know we'll get into later, but that kind of support is everything that I need and that all the Jewish students around me that are fighting this fight definitely could use more of.
So important. And our capacity to create those spaces, whether they're physical spaces, but just communities of other Jewish students, other students, and staff who care for the community, for sure we see as absolutely critical. Max, what's your take?
Be bold, be defiantly Jewish. Do things I post about Israel to my Instagram story just despite other people who I know don't like Israel. It's not necessarily positive things either. They still don't like it. And then go to Hillel to like chill off. It's great. I love Hillel. I don't know that part. I forget the rest.
No, it's great though. And seriously, I did not pre-wire any of these answers. But whether it's Hillel or another organization on campus that's supporting Jewish students, it really, all of us can be a part of that, whether that's financially, as professionals who want to join the ranks, or just encouraging young people to turn out and be a part of those communities, goes an incredibly long way. And the courage you just heard about too. If you haven't seen it, sophomore at Northwestern, Lily Cohen, I think is her last name, wrote a fantastic op-ed. It was featured in the Northwestern Daily. I'm sure most of you subscribe. If you don't, I guess go Cats. We're going to be sharing it in social media because it really expresses how critical it is to be loud and proud in the face of what can feel challenging or difficult. Owen.
Yeah, I mean, for the larger community, especially for a lot of Zionist students, really showing that you're there to support them And additionally, Zionism isn't someone's full identity. Everyone has various facets of their identity. So if you're a Zionist, you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. You have to believe that the Jewish people have the right to a state. You have to believe that Israel has the right to exist, the right to self-determination. Full stop. Additionally, we need to recognize the intersections. So I'm not Jewish, but I'm a proud gay Zionist. Full stop. And it's providing that community, that home away from home, where they might have been in a bubble, back in their homes, back with their families, and making sure that, yes, you're in a new place, but you have a family, you have a place here, and you're always welcome. And making sure that we recognize those intersectionalities and continue to celebrate that.
Amazing, amazing. All right, we're gonna close with one question from me, but then we'll be taking some audience questions. So I don't know exactly what the process, it looks like we already have a few over here. You can hand them off to ADL staff or Hillel staff if you have written questions. So let's talk about hope, because there's a lot to be optimistic about and hopeful about, and we will never survive as a community without that. So I'd love to hear what gives you hope, and Max, we can begin with you.
After every battle with the student union, or even when I'm tabling for Peace Now U of T, which is a pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, pro-peace club, has many friends, there's a bunch of people who come up to us who say they won't say publicly, but that they like us, or there are some people who are like, I work for the student union, they absolutely hate you guys, I love you. It's, and the amount of support we have from people is actually really heartwarming.
Yeah, no, I mean, looking at that support and actually acknowledging it is critical. Owen.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it really has warmed my heart to see how much outreach and how much involvement that AFI has really gotten in the past few months. I think seeing so many people so fired up, you know, for Israel to fight for Jewish students, I think is so incredibly heartwarming to me. And it's really heartwarming to see that the campus climate is slowly changing and that we can get there. We just have to keep going, we have to keep trying, and we have to keep doing what we're doing.
Amazing. Haley.
Yeah, well, everything that you both just said. But the one little piece that gives me so much hope and fills my heart with so much joy is being able to share all the holidays with my non-Jewish friends, showing everybody little pieces of Judaism that isn't the hard stuff all the time. An example, I loved Passover last year. I opened my dorm room door. I set up a beer pong table. I put a nice tablecloth over it, and we set up a whole Passover Seder in there. And anybody who wanted to stop by for some chocolate Seder food, whenever they had time, just came in, and we had a little conversation about it. Or when I went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of little presents for everybody during some of the other holidays, like everything about just being able to share all the amazing parts about Judaism with other people and showing them a little insight of like why I feel so proud to be Jewish gives me so much hope for where we can go as Jewish people.
And clearly as an entrepreneur and business person, you've got a future because you just created Passover Pong, which I imagine is going to be a big Hillel program of the future with non-alcoholic beverages, I'm sure. Okay, and I'll just add, for myself, in terms of hope, in the face of these challenging issues, Hillel this year is on track for more student engagement with more students than ever in 100 years. We have Jewish students and students from all communities coming out, and we have to recognize that and celebrate that. All right, with that, okay. So first audience question, how is Hillel working with the administration to help alleviate anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism on campus? Yeah, if anyone wants to comment on that. Okay, Max, please.
So in Canada, student unions are a bit independent from administration, which I think is a bit different than in America. No. Okay. because of this, the admin is actually a bit tied. They can't like defund a student union or like force a student union to change a motion because they're independent. However, if the student union does something that is like explicitly illegal or discriminatory, then the administration can step in, and Hillel also works with the administration behind the scenes. So during my battles with the student union, I also meet with the like vice dean of equity for like the university on a monthly basis, and she talks about what she's doing to help with Hillel. And then when the student unions do mess up so much that it's explicit, then they really crack down really hard, and that's really entertaining.
The president of our school has the rabbi of our Hillel on speed dial. It could be 2 a.m. and Rabbi Sue will get a call about something going on, and it doesn't matter what it is. The two of them have a very close relationship. Our Dean Dave, who's in charge of making sure students on campus feel safe, has her on speed dial as well. And being able to have those conversations with them and stay close and connected with them has always been an extra sense of safety and security on campus, and none of that would have been doable without Rabbi Sue.
Yeah, and I'll just add, well, on the one hand, as you're hearing, Campus Hillels do make a concerted effort to invest in relationships with their administration partners. And at the Hillel International level, we have invested in making sure that 1,200 professionals across campus have the skills and knowledge to be able to form those partnerships, and also that university presidents, chancellors, DEI officers, vice presidents of student affairs, that they have the knowledge to recognize contemporary anti-Semitism and act on it. We had last year 45 university presidents in a room like this for 2 days talking about these issues, and that does, of course, make a difference. I want to shift to Owen. We got a question. As someone who's not Jewish by background, why do you feel it is important to be so outwardly pro-Israel and oppose anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism?
Yeah, I mean, so for the longest time for me, I felt uncomfortable being who I am. I grew up in a very conservative area where being gay just wasn't okay. You couldn't be that part of yourself. So when I see that people can't be who they are fully, and they can't be proudly Zionist, that's incredibly problematic and deeply personal for me. So that's why it's so important to me, because everyone, regardless of what you're doing or where you choose to go to university, choose to live, you have the right to be who you are fully and proudly express that. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah. As former thank you. As former high school students, how do you feel high school settings could help promote allyship for not only the Jewish community, but for all minoritized communities? Any thoughts? Yeah, Haley, go ahead.
Oh, putting me on the spot here. Well, I think for Jewish communities specifically, the first step is these partnerships, helping students truly understand before they get to college, but just experiencing diverse cultures and backgrounds, opening yourself up to that, letting yourself be vulnerable at the high school age. It's so much easier said than done, but if you have a chance and you're to bring a non-Jewish friend to synagogue and then go to church with them sometime, or go to their mosque, or experience some piece of their culture that feels super connected to them, so that you can learn and you can feel what's so meaningful to them about their religion or their culture, then you're able to go into college with such a more diverse perspective, which is very helpful when having these kinds of conversations and trying to connect with people from all over the world.
That's great advice. Any other input, Owen or Max, on that one? Okay, no worries. Next question is from a high school student where the student said, there may be one or two other Jewish people, and from what everyone on the panel has said about anti-Semitism at college, even though there probably will be more Jews in that community in college, it sounds a little scary. What advice do you have to mitigate those concerns?
I don't want to say it's not scary, because it definitely can be, but I do have to say that some of my closest friends who are Jewish have never seen a single piece of anti-Semitism happen on my campus. If you want to avoid it, if you don't want to be part of the conversation, no shame for doing that, because it's hard. But if you don't want to be part of that conversation, you don't have to be. And most of the time you can avoid being part of those situations altogether. If you do, which so many kudos to you for that, because like I said, the work gets challenging sometimes, then you're really gonna have to fight for it, and you're gonna have to put everything in. But if that's not for you, it's not for you, and that's so okay too. So not being part of those conversations can be pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important answer. And even when you look at the data, so our study with ADL a little more than a year ago identified 32, almost a third of students had experienced or witnessed an issue of anti-Semitism, and yet that means that more than 2/3 of students have not. And thank God the issues that we are seeing are, for the most part, not issues of physical threat or violence. Jewish students, in some ways, it's really Dickensian, and best of times, worst of times. There are more opportunities to be Jewish and to do Jewish on campus today than at any time in history. So for whoever submitted the question as a student, you don't need to be afraid. You do need to be prepared, and that's what this discussion is all about. All right, we got a couple other questions streaming in here. What more do you want to see from the ADL or other organizations that they're not already doing in fighting anti-Semitism? Very fair, good, balance it out here, yeah.
I think that's, that's a very good question. When it comes to fighting it on campus, I think really trying to do your best to ensure that there's almost like a little blueprint for every single university, which is like a giant task, but it's very necessary, because when you work with the students as much as possible to create a blueprint for each campus, you're going to have something that's tailored to fighting it for that campus, because at that point we know it'll work, because it's been specifically made for that campus. And I mean, I've been to other conferences where certain things are really, really helpful for UC Davis, but sometimes they're not as relevant to UC Davis. There was one where I was in a breakout room where they said you have to fight BDS, fire people up. Well, that doesn't apply to UC Davis, because we're in a post-BDS era. Like, we are in a completely different spot than we were 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. So for us, having a different plan to go off of to fight anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism on campus is really helpful. And all that takes is trying to channel those resources that are already there into the necessary spots.
I think it's a great answer. People say all politics are local. It's also true that all of these issues, and importantly how we address them, that has to happen locally. And it's a great push of encouragement to the ADL, to Hillel, and others to make sure we are addressing what is specific to that campus, to the administration partners, and to the campus dynamics. Yeah. Next question, how can students protect their mental health and well-being more broadly when facing these issues?
You want to go to Hillel and just chill. Sit in there, go to one of their Shabbat or bar nights. It's best. Hang out with other Jewish people sometimes. That's what I do.
Yeah, great answer.
I mean, I feel like this question was directed for me. I've had a long mental health struggle with anxiety, depression, and PTSD, and I'm very open about it because it's a big piece of who I am and honestly why I'm sitting on this panel today. So for everybody, mental health affects them differently, and finding the little things that help you. So I go to therapy once a week, and I adore my therapist, and she's there for every one of my needs. But it's also my cycling, having something that takes me away from campus for a minute, takes my brain out of the fight that I'm fighting, because if I were to go all in all the time, it would be too much, and I would never recommend that for any any of you high schoolers sitting in here that are going to college. Diversify what you're doing. Find things that you love and find things that are hard that you care about. And having those different outlets will allow you to both make that important change, but do it with as strong mental health as you can.
It's an inspiring answer and set of answers. I will tell you that we recognize at Hillel that mental health and wellness is in some ways the biggest epidemic facing young people today. There's so much stress and anxiety and isolation and depression plaguing young people. So I go back to Max's answer, the number one prophylactic, the number one way as an antidote to deal with these issues is community, so young people don't feel alone. So whether through a Hillel community or other community, we can make that difference. But even beyond that, you know, Haley's answer really underscores all of the coping mechanisms we all need to support for young people today. I'll just finally point out on this one, we have 21 embedded social workers at Hillel now, and that number is gonna grow by leaps and bounds, because as a Jewish organization, Jewish values can't stop at learning Torah or at celebrating Shabbat or at Tikkun Olam. It needs to take care of the people who we want to be part of our community. We know there are some negatives in terms of the challenges you guys have described. What's the best Jewish program on the positive side that you've attended?
Easy, chocolate Seder. Duh. I mean, I'm saying that because we do a chocolate Seder at our Hillel every year. It brings in one of the biggest crowds. There's a fraternity house right next door that's not Jewish, and all those boys come. They're obsessed with the chocolate. I don't know what's easier to get fraternity boys at a function. But just like having that massive community of almost no Jews who are just celebrating Judaism, like that's really cool nowadays. So that's definitely my favorite thing that we do.
Wonderful. And we can have the chocolate Seder followed by the Passover Pong. So we're killing the game. Okay, next.
Yeah, well, as someone who's not Jewish, I think my favorite thing every week is Shabbat dinner. Being able to go with all of my friends, you know, just have a great time, and it really takes my mind off the week. It helps me decompress, de-stress. Then afterwards, I mean, we'll go out to various functions and whatnot. Sometimes we'll use Shabbat dinner as like a launch point. I don't recommend doing that.
It's okay.
The next morning, it's not fun.
Pre-gaming at Shabbat. You know, we got so much innovation happening on this stage. Yeah.
But, you know, that sense of community, you know, has been amazing. And again, for me, as someone who's not Jewish, really being able to have all of that community and just being welcomed with open arms so quickly, without hesitation, to me has been the most amazing thing. So Shabbat dinners will always be like my favorite thing.
So cool. And the magic of Shabbat is there for all of us, Jewish students and our allies across the community. There are many Hillels where you walk in and 25 to 35% of the participants are not of a Jewish background, and that's a beautiful thing.
Can I say 2 events?
You got it.
All right. My favorite Hillel event that I went to was a painting night with wine. That you had to be of age, and you couldn't pay for it. It was on a volunteer system. And then there was also speed friending. So you sat down at a table and you were painting, and the other person was doing painting, and you talked. And then every like 10 minutes, we switched. That was super cool. I hope our Hillel does that again. I know that took a lot of planning. And then another one, which I really like, is our Hillel does bar nights, because we live in Canada. And so you get like a drink voucher if you're of age, and then we all go to this one campus bar, the Maddie, which is nice, and then it's really lively. I like it a lot.
Terrific. Listen, I want to hear a huge round of applause for these 3 leaders. There is just so much we can be hopeful for with student leaders like the three people reflected here. Thanks to each of you for being a part of this. And thanks to all of you for caring about these issues, investing your time this afternoon. We will succeed not only in taking these issues on, but in creating inspiring Jewish life for Jewish students and all students on campus communities. Thank you all very much.
And thank you to Hillel for giving us this opportunity.